Titanic, the most infamous ship in history, which sank on her maiden voyage. After more than a century's worth of expert study, do we yet have the full picture? The 10th of April 1912, Southampton, England. The White Star Line, one of Great Britain's premier shipping lines, is preparing the maiden voyage of their latest vessel, named RMS Titanic, on a trip which will depart Southampton with stops in Cherbourg, France and Queenstown, today called Cork, in Ireland, before setting off for her main destination of New York City in America. The Edwardian era is thought of by many to be the golden age of oceanliners, with many nautical technological breakthroughs and feats of engineering being accomplished one after the other, driven by a booming market prior to World War I. In the age before air travel, the ocean liner is the go-to way of crossing the Atlantic. Titanic is an Olympic-class ship designed to carry both passengers and cargo. She was built by the Harland and Wolff Shipbuilding Company in Belfast, Northern Ireland, and as of 1912 is the biggest ship to ever be constructed, measuring 882 feet 9 inches or 269.06 metres long, almost as long as 4 Boeing 747s parked nose to tail, and has a capacity of up to 2,453 passengers and 874 crew, 3,327 in total. The ship carries its first-class passengers in the height of luxury, with elaborately lavish furniture and interior design, as well as amenities such as restaurants, a swimming pool and even a Turkish bath. But its second and third classes are also top rate for the time in comparison to existing ships. Titanic is powered by 3 main engines, 2 reciprocating steam engines and 1 centrally placed low-pressure turbine, each driving a propeller, giving the ship a combined output of 46,000 horsepower. This combination gives the ship the power it needs with a smooth ride. For safety, she was designed with a total of 16 watertight compartments. If the hull is damaged, the water ingress will be contained within one of these sections, without spreading across the entire volume of the vessel. Titanic is designed to stay afloat with up to 2 of these compartments flooded in any combination, but can withstand 3 or even 4 if they are all at the bow. If it does come down to it, there are 20 lifeboats sufficient for up to 1,178 people. Not enough for everyone at once. However, due to operating on busy shipping lines, if they do encounter trouble, the idea behind the lifeboats is to ferry the passengers from the sinking vessel to a soon-to-arrive rescue ship, as is the norm for the time. Titanic actually exceeds the legal minimum for the number of lifeboats, which would have been 16 in this case. The Titanic is the second of 3 planned sister ships for the White Star Line. She precedes her older and slightly smaller sister Olympic, and will be joined by the last of the trio, originally to be named Gigantic, but later decided to be called Britannic instead. The 2 sister ships would later both be conscripted into use in the Great War, where Olympic would purposely ram into and sink a German U-boat, but Britannic would sadly be sunk by a sea mine while acting as a hospital ship. Commanding Titanic on its maiden voyage will be Captain Edward Smith, one of White Star Line's most experienced and senior officers. This will be his last voyage before retirement. Titanic is equipped with a wireless radio system allowing the crew to transmit messages and communications via Morse code. It will mostly be used to transmit passengers' messages while at sea, but has other uses such as allowing the crew to coordinate with other vessels and receive messages from land. On the 11th of April, Titanic leaves Europe bound for New York City. The route will take them across the Atlantic. They are scheduled to arrive on the 17th. On the 14th of April at 11:35 PM, around 2/3 of the way to New York off Newfoundland, Canada, Titanic is making its way through an ice field. Spotters in the crow's nest scan the horizon for icebergs. Surprisingly, no onboard lighting is used to aid them, and the front of the ship is actually kept as dark as possible, as lights would impede visibility more than it would help the men see. Lights would make their eyesight adjust to conditions brighter than the natural level. Forward-facing lighting could also blind other ships, like how a driver must turn off their main beams for others at night. Compared to normal though, tonight is especially dark. With 30 seconds away from collision, they spot a huge berg and make the call to the wheelhouse. Iceberg right ahead. A hard turn is initiated and the engines are reversed, but there is not enough time. Contact is made. The extent of the damage is not known, but in 1912 the risk icebergs pose to ships is not as well understood as today, and they aren't thought to be especially dangerous. But this impact has dented enough of the hull for a number of the retaining rivets to fail, and seawater gushes inside. The captain had not been on duty at the time, but is woken and rushes to inspect the damage. It is assessed that 5 compartments have been compromised, and a 6th lightly so. The Titanic will sink. The wireless operator sends out a distress call. The closest ship to Titanic is the SS Californian. They try to contact them, but a ship's wireless operator does not work 24/7, and he had gone to bed shortly before Titanic hit the berg. Signal rockets are also sent up, but Californian doesn't spot them. The next closest ship this side of the ice field is the Carpathia, but it is 3.5 hours away. The crew begin to order the evacuation of as many passengers as they can into the lifeboats, beginning with women and children first. But some are apprehensive about getting into the small vessels in the freezing conditions, and many choose to stay on the Titanic, possibly not realising the gravity of their situation, or not wanting to leave their husbands and fathers behind. As a result, many lifeboats go out only partially filled. After 2 AM, Titanic's sinking accelerates, and the stern lifts out of the water. Under the enormous stress, the structure fails and the ship snaps in half. At 2:20 in the morning on the 15th of April, she slips beneath the waves. Drifting in the freezing ocean in temperatures of -2 degrees, the human body has no chance of surviving. Some are pulled from the water aboard the lifeboats. Only 706 survive. Among those lost is Captain Edward Smith, who went down with his ship. Eventually, those who are left are rescued by the Carpathia and taken to New York. In both the United States and United Kingdom, investigations and inquiries are held, with the two reaching similar conclusions. For the most part, standard procedure was adhered to, but this was in some parts outdated and required modernisation, including ensuring a ship should have lifeboat capacity for all on board. Partly blamed are the crew, who were said to ignore a number of ice warnings from other ships, including, ironically, the Californian. The extent of the damage sustained was more than that a ship could reasonably be designed to absorb. The graze down the side of Titanic was just too long, and opened up too many compartments. Had she not turned and instead hit head-on, it is thought they would have sustained damage but not enough to sink, and could have carried on to New York. The US investigation mainly faulted the British Board of Trade, and the British investigation mostly blamed the culture of travelling as quickly as possible through ice fields. As a direct result of the findings, the International Ice Patrol is established in 1914, which locates icebergs in the North Atlantic and charts their movements, allowing for the forewarning of vessels using these shipping lanes. A number of common myths would circulate around the story of the Titanic, including how it was supposedly a poorly designed death trap, and their hubris led the shipbuilders to falsely believe and brag to the public how Titanic was the unsinkable ship, only to be proven wrong. But it was in fact the media who'd come up with this moniker, and Titanic was actually a sound design with a proven track record, as evidenced by the Olympic being older and serving until retirement over 20 years later. In fact, the level of damage sustained by Titanic would be more than enough to sink even a modern liner. 100 years later, the Costa Concordia would completely capsize after having sustained less damage than the Titanic did. In 1985, the wreck of the Titanic would finally be found and laid on by human eyes for the first time in 73 years. It remains as a staple of not only history, but also of pop culture, especially with the release of the movie Titanic in 1997. Even into the 21st century, Titanic is still talked about, and dives to its wreckage still undertaken. One of which, in the year 2023, 111 years after Titanic, would take a dark turn. As always, thanks for watching, and if you enjoyed what you just saw, give the video a like and subscribe to catch new videos as I upload them.